शंयोरावृणीमहे गातुम् यज्ञाय गातुम् यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वम् जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिम् विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगम् सर्वम् यद्भूतम् यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषा नः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वम् व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इद्मः शरद्धभिः सप्तास्यासन् परिधडः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवा यद्यज्ञम् तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तम् यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागश्चक्रे वायम्याने आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागुम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णाद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूभिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अध्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति वेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मणे रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनौ व्यात्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
Namaste. Let us start the class today with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today we start the verse number 7 in the sequence that Swami Maheshananji has taken. So last few weeks we did Tasmat Yagyat Sarvahutah Richas Sambhritam Prishadajyam Pashugastagas Chakre Aranyan Gramyaschaye. Today we are going to do Tasmat Yagyat Sarvahutah Richas Samani Jagnire Chanda Gumsi Jagnire Tasmat Yajus Tasmat Ajayata. So the creation was explained in the form of a yajna, in the form of a process that is meant for each one of us to realize our full potential while we are still alive. That's the real meaning of yajna. And the full potential means complete freedom, no touching with any kind of problems in life, not being touched by them, having a sense of independence, not even be touched by death, because it is not really, it's outside the purview of of death. So this is the purpose of the yajna. So in this yajna, there is a structure involved based on which we need to understand our true potential. It's like building a house, and once the house is complete, we are done. And not a perfect example, but just as a simile. And in order to build the home, there is some scaffolding which is required to build the home. So this is really, I would say, the building of the home is how we think, how we consider ourselves to be, what is our sense of my existence. How do we conclude who we are, what our future is? This is the house that we have to build. It's a very beautiful house that we have to build. And we have to figure out how to build this house. Not some ramshackle thing, but something which is so solid and so beautiful that it serves me in my final quest of understanding my own self. So this is the thing. So now, building the house requires some structure. Outside structure, scaffolding. That scaffolding, as we have gone through that, I'm just giving you a connection to what we said before, has two dimensions. So one dimension is stability on the ground, and the other dimension is the height. So you can build on top of that. So both of them are the Varna and the Ashrama system. So the Varna system is the type of typifying ourselves as to what kind of a person I am. And all four types of people, which we will study more later on in Purusha Suktam, are okay. All four of us are qualified to reach the highest. It's not as though only one type of person has to do that. No, everyone. But the methods are slightly different for each one of them. So this is one side, which is the Varna system, which we have not really explored yet. So in that sense, the Purusha Suktam is often considered by the wise people to be a treatise at the social level as well. How should society be structured so that it supports your own growth? So it's a two-dimensional matrix that Purusha Suktam does. The other dimension was the ashrama system. And there we spent some time in the previous mantra. Pashugasta chakre vayavyana karanyan gramyascha ye sambritam prishadajyam. And so, just as a revision, the previous mantra talked about for each one of the person that has already decided this is my role in society, this is the type of a person I am, this is the type of my samskaras, my strengths and weaknesses. Within those, how do I parlay that into something which is life becomes useful to me? So there, very beautifully put together, is the fact that one should consider that nivritti marga is good for spiritual progress. So this is what is called aranya. And pravritti marga is meant for people who are more prone to material success, not to spiritual success. They want more, they want company, they want recognition. And both of them will eventually lead to the same, but not as directly as the aranya. So the gramya method also is to accent myself for success in life. What kind of success? It could be material success, social success, leadership success, as we normally do. Everyone wants to be a leader and a successful person, make a lot of money, have recognition. So all this is the Gramya Marga. And so these are the two methods. And what we are advised is, please recognize where you are, and as far as possible, as quickly as possible, adopt the Nivritti Marga, where you rely just on yourself. You do not rely on others, because the reliance on others is fraught with uncertainty. Some people may recognize you, some people may not. But as far as your own estimation is concerned, it is purely up to you. You have to really figure out. And then, as you know, we also talked about the similarity of the Gramya and Aranya to that of the 4 stages of life, which is Grihastha, which is active householder, and then Vanaprastha, and then from Vanaprastha we went to Sannyasa Ashrama, which is also the progression that we all should follow. And we cannot do that until we are aware of the positive growth in our life. And the positive growth is you learn to appreciate yourself, learn to like yourself, to love yourself, and to appreciate who you are. And do not depend on others to give you that validation. So it's really a question of validation. Everyone is really looking for validation. Swami Dayananda used to say that. He said, it's very interesting if you look at all human beings, what they are very comfortable with, what they all seek is validation. This is why one of the harshest emotion to overcome is rejection. Rejection is a very, very difficult emotion to get rid of. Nobody stands for rejection. Everybody wants to stand for validation. And validation means also means that validation leads to a sense of significance. Non-validation, or rejection rather, leads to insignificance. No one wants to be insignificant. We want to be noted. And so there, the internal significance, the internal validation is the most important. Most important. And if you really understand this, that the outside validation is really meant for internal meditation, inside meditation, validation, sorry, not meditation at this point, just validation. So the structure for the ashrama was given in the previous verse, which is Aranyat Gramyascha Yere. Okay, now we are done with the previous one. Now let us look at verse number 7. What does it say, and why does it say what it says? So here, Tasma'at Yajñat Sarvahutaha Riches Samani Jagnire Chanda Gumsi Jaggire Tasma'at Yadus Tasmadajayata. So the meaning of that is, may you, Tasmat means that Tasmat of course came from, remember, Tasmat Virad Ajayata Virajo Adi Purishaha Yat Purushena Havishaha Sajato Atyarichyata. This is where we started. Sajataha Atyarichyata means that in the creation initially the Brahmaji was created as a being, as a visible being. And that Brahmaji had complete knowledge about everything, including the knowledge about himself. And from there, all the beings were created with incomplete knowledge. They also had knowledge about things, but incomplete, something is quite missing. And if you complete with that missing piece, then you are done. You are free. So this is the whole structure of the yajna. So tasmat yajnat sarva hutaha. May we do this homa. Hutaha means one which is homa has been done or should be done. And this homa is now in the form of the expression of the Vedas. Expression of the Vedas. So the Vedas here are given in the form of Rik, Sama, Yajuhu, and also Atharva. Atharva is implied. It is not specifically called out, but it is implied, and we will see why. What is the reason for it? Okay. So now, so here the question is that the Aranya method of understanding yourself means the Nivritti Marga, means a thorough understanding of how you are progressing, what path you should follow to make you are going in the right direction. Because the Pravritti Marga, where the material progress is, will lead you to some pleasant places. It will lead you to some pleasant places, but it doesn't lead you to your final destination. Swami Viditatmananda had given this very beautiful example. It has always stuck with me. He said, suppose you buy a new car, and so you and your companions or your spouse or someone, and you just took the delivery of the new car, and now you are out enjoying the travel in the new car, and you are showing off a little bit all the features of the new car, how pleasant it is. You can you have a sunroof that you can go back and forth and so on, and you're saying, shall we take it out for a drive? So they say, okay, wonderful. And so you go on mountain roads, see how well it curves and all of that. Now what he said was, Swami Viditatmananda said was that in this quest for enjoying a new car, what are you going to do? You are going to choose a pleasant way to travel. You are going to choose a smooth road, not full of potholes, a safe place, not an unsafe place, a non-crowded versus a crowded, all of those kinds of things, so that you maximize your journey with this new car. So the new car stands for material pleasure. Okay? Contrast it with, you have to catch a plane. Okay? And nowadays, of course, you have this GPS, so you want to find out what is the fastest way to get there. And now it turns out that the fastest way takes you on some potholes and takes you in some unpleasant places, crowded places. Will you mind these things on the way? No. Why? Because the GPS tells you where to go in order to be in time to catch your plane. Your destination is reaching San Francisco airport or wherever, to make sure you are not late. You're not worried about the pleasantness of the journey. Okay? So this is the analogy that we have to see. I want to know, how do I travel so I reach my desired destination, which is complete freedom in this life? This is what we need to do. So there, the Nivritti Marga is that it may be that you do not enjoy the company of other people. If you're used to cracking jokes and so on and so forth, you need other people for cracking jokes, so that everybody says, wow, what a wonderful person. He remembers all the jokes, funny jokes, everybody laughs, you feel good about it. Here, Nivritti Marga means you don't have to crack jokes because there is no one else to listen to you. And you have to enjoy your own company. And so it may become lonely at point. Anyway, I won't belabor that point, but you get the picture. That the Nivritti Marga is reaching a destination regardless of whether the way there is pleasant or not pleasant. Okay? So this is the thing that we have to do. Now, the question is, where is the GPS for me? Because nowadays we were used to it, the older people like me, we would pull out a map, and in the map we will say, okay, I think I'm going to go on 280, then I'm going to turn right, and then I'm going to take this side road, and so you follow that. Nowadays the GPS, it tells you all of the directions. The Google voice comes in and says, quarter mile there is a right turn. So you just follow it, whether or not it is good or not, because you're just following it. What is my GPS in life? This is the verse which tells you what your GPS of life is, which is the Vedic wisdom, the Vedas. And so all the four Vedas, Rik, Sama, Yajuhu and Atharva. These are the four Vedas. And so the four Vedas, it's interesting. First of all, these Vedas are called Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya. The meaning of Apaurushaya means not Purushasya Janyaha. It is not born from human beings. So Swami Maheshanji gave a very beautiful example. He says, let us understand why it is called not generated from human beings. And so it is nothing to do with, well, it has something to do. We always say that it is done by Ishvara, not by human beings. But he goes into a little bit deeper. He says, look, any knowledge which is given by the person depends very much on whether the person is telling the truth or not. Okay, when I was reviewing this example, an idea came to me. So the idea is that supposing you are sitting there and the FedEx guy comes in, and I'm just concocting it. It doesn't happen this way, but supposing you look at this example. So the FedEx guy comes in and he says, I have a very important package and I need to deliver it to John, or his last name, some last name or also. So is there any John here? Now, you can say, if you are John, you will immediately raise your hand and say, oh yes, I was expecting this package. It's me. And you sign it and you accept the package. If you are not John, you see around no one else is raising their hands. You say, I am John. Your name is Vijay. But you say, I am, well, actually, nobody will, so you'll have to be a Westerner with a complete Western look. Your name is actually, something completely different. But you say, I am John. And he delivers, he gives it to you. You open the package. It doesn't belong to you. But you, by telling this lie, you accepted a gift. So here's the point. Maheshananji says that the knowledge generated by a human being is anitya jnanam. Anitya jnanam. Anitya jnanam means it is not true until it is verified by a given human being. So here, the poor FedEx guy, he doesn't know. He's supposed to say, is there any John in here on this address? And there's a lot of people sitting there. And you can say, okay, I'm John. And so this is anritam. This is not true. Or you can say, I am John, you really are John. And it is satyam. So the satyata, the truthfulness, or asatyata, the non-truthfulness depends upon a human being. So therefore, even the spiritual knowledge which has been talked about by somebody depends very much upon whether the person is talking the truth or not. And we don't know. We have no idea. Somebody has to verify. And later on, if the FedEx people decide that the original John says, where is my package? Then you find out that the wrong person has been given. So similarly here also, you can follow some spiritual path and it looks very good up to a point until you made some further inquiries and you find that the person himself doesn't really understand it. So this is what is called Purusha Jnanam. So Purusha Jnanam means, just one second, I think there was a message here. Anyway, I won't bother. This is called Purusha Jnanam. Vedas is Apurusha Jnanam, which means the knowledge is not Anitya Jnanam, it is Nitya Jnanam. Nitya Jnanam. Nitya Jnanam means it is the truth you have to verify yourself. You don't depend on anyone else. Something is given to you. And because it is always the voice of the creation, it is Nitya Jnanam. It is always true. Has been for trillions of years and will be for trillions of years. Atma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This is the basic truth about it. But you have to verify it yourself. You don't doubt the Jnanam, you doubt your ability to grasp it. So this is why it is called Apaurushaya, not made by human beings. So the word Apaurushaya doesn't mean that Ishvara did it. The Jnanam itself is Nityam. Beautiful point. Beautiful point. So Vedas is Apaurushaya. Then the next thing is, so this is now what we are talking about is the recommendation for thinking, the way one should think in life in order to maximize the Nivritti Marga. This is what we are talking about. What should I follow? What recommendation should I follow? What method should I use? This has been given very well in the Vedas. So the Vedas are an oral tradition. It's an oral tradition because the most important mental activity is sound. It is not opening your eyes and reading. It is not writing. It is thinking. And the best thoughts are in sound. Even now, in fact, when we chant the Vedic structures, Purusham Sahasrashirsha Purusha, this is the chanting, and I am inviting you to please remember this by heart. I try to do that as much as possible, so that in the morning I chant my own Vedic verses. But so I commit it to memory. And so the Vedas are a sound-oriented, which is an oral tradition. So you transmit it from one person to another in a sound form. And even when easier forms of writing became available, the writing has been going on for a number of years. It's not as though, so they were all on the bark of a tree. So even now we get manuscripts that are literally thousands of years old, that are written on the bark of a tree, and then they are well preserved. But even so, the basic tradition is oral. And even now, the basic tradition is the instructions from a guru to a shishya, in a sound form. So anyway, what I'm saying is the Vedas are all basically an oral tradition. Now, in the oral tradition, there are two methods of displaying the oral authenticity from one person to the other. So one of them is what is called the sutra method. So Brahma Sutra is, for example, which Badarayana wrote, Vyasa wrote, was very succinct and packed with a lot of knowledge. And so there are 555 sutras, which barely take 10 or 12 pages. But if you were to write commentaries on it, then it will be thousands of pages. But it is all committed to memory. So this is called the sutra method. Very difficult to master, but it is possible to be done. The other method is poetry. Poetry. So poetry means that it is easier to memorize because of the sentence structure, because of the way the sound. So, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, is in a poetic. It's a Gita. It's a Bhagavad means Bhagwan's Gita. Gita means it is a poem. It is not a prose. It's a Gita. This is how it goes. Ashochans anvashochastvam pragya bhasha sugat pragya bhasha tu bhasat pragya vadam tu bhasate, etc., etc. So gata sunscha nanuphoshochanti panditaha. And so the reason I am able to recall is because it's a poem. It all fits together. So a lot of the Vedas is in poetic form. But some of the Veda is also in prose form. So it doesn't mean that cannot be done, but it's a little bit more difficult to memorize in that sense. So now we have the following structures of the Vedas. So you have Richaha. So Richaha means the Rik mantras in the Rik Vedas. They are in poetry. They are all in poetry. So the entire Rik Veda is in poetic form. Samaveda. Samaveda is in song form. It may not be poetry, but it is done in the form of songs with swaras. So the Samaveda is in the form of songs. Okay. Then Yajurveda, which is called Chandamsi. Chandas. So means a portion of the prose is in the prose form. So Yajurveda is in the prose form. Then we have Atharva. Atharva is a mixture of, it doesn't have any songs, but it is a mixture of poetry and prose. And so the Atharva Veda is covered. So it doesn't mean that the Purusha Suktam doesn't really, it's just the way it is written, that it is also covered by Atharva Veda. And one thing I would like to do is to recite to you the Taittiriya Upanishad. So the Taittiriya Upanishad, as you know, has these five, has these five koshas. Kosha means covering. So each one of us is covered by different layers. It's almost like I have to discover myself by taking off one layer of the cover each. And these covers are, just very briefly, Annamaya Kosha. So the body, the physical body, which is born out of the Annam, Annam means food, and sustained by food and goes back to the food, is the outermost sheath, cover, called Annamaya Kosha. Then inside of that is Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha means all of the physiological functions, including breathing. So this is the Pranamaya Kosha. Then inside of that comes the Manomaya Kosha, the mind, the thoughts. And so there I'll read you the section pertaining to Manomaya Kosha. I won't read the whole thing. So he says, Tasmat sarvayushadamuchyata iti tasyaisha eva sharira atma yah purvasya tasmad va etasmaat pranamayat anyontara atma manomayaha. So the manomayaha is inside the prana. That means it is the mind, my thinking. Tasya purusha vidhata, anyontara atma manomayaha tenaisha purnaha sava esha purusha vida eva tasya purusha vidhatam anvayam purusha vidaha tasya yajureva shiraha rik dakshinah pakshaha sama uttarav pakshaha adesha atma atharvangirasah pucham pratishtha tadapyesha sloko bhavati. So there he says that the thoughts should be modeled along the Vedic instructions given in Yajureva Shiraha. Yaju is the head, just the shape of the human being in thought form. Rik is the right hand, Dakshinah Paksha. Sama Uttarav Paksha is the left hand. Adesha Atma. What is the main trunk is the way it is communicated to you. It's called Adesha, Adesha Atma. And then what holds it all is Atharvangirasaha, Pucham. And so Atharva is also pointed out there as well. Okay, so this is these are the Vedas that we should resort to. Why should we resort to? Because we need to understand how do we think, how do we conclude, how do we lead our life mentally so that we are on the right path. This is the reason why the Vedic instruction is very useful to us. A little bit on the structure of the Vedas. So each of the Vedas, each of the 4 Vedas I talked about, Rik, Sama, Yajur, Atharva, etc., is made out of 4 parts in some way of looking and 3 parts in other way of looking. So the 4 part is called Samhita, Aranyaka, Brahmana and Upanishad. These are the 4 ways of looking at it. So Samhita means the mantras, the benedictions, the very brief mention of what the mantras are is given in the Samhita. Then Aranyaka are the text on rituals, ceremonies, sacrifices. So all of the Vedas have it. So one portion is also Aranyaka. Brahmana is a portion that gives detailed commentaries on the rituals, ceremonies and sacrifices. That is the Brahmana portion. And the last portion is Upanishad, which is based on self-knowledge. Why do we know it is related to self-knowledge? Because of 2 prefixes, Upa and Ni. Upa means very close, and you are as close as you can get to yourself. It means it is self. And Ni means Nishchaya. Nishchaya means any other knowledge that you gain is subject to getting better. You are not the complete knowledge about anything. So, we had Newton that came out with an absolute cartological equation about what creation is all about. And when Einstein came it was better than the Newtonian view. And it is very possible that even the Einsteinian view will be made better by something else. Yes, it doesn't completely explain everything. When he died, he was still working on an overall equation that explains everything. You cannot do that without understanding the Vedic structure. And so he was also incomplete. He is considered to be incomplete by even the scientists. And so there is always something which is incomplete. But in the case of self-knowledge, because the self is unchanging and the same, it can have a definite knowledge, which is nothing more is necessary. So that's why it is called Upa plus Ni plus Shad. Shad means one which reveals the truth to you, what removes all of the impurities, all of the doubts about it. So this is called Upanishad, which is self-knowledge. So these are the 4 portions of the Vedas. Another way of looking at the Vedas is that it has 3 sections. It has Karma Kanda, it has Upasana Kanda, and it has Jnana Kanda. So Karma Kanda means all the rituals that need to be done. How do you improve your life through doing things? And so there the Karma Yoga, the right attitude for actions, is included in the Karma Kanda. It is the bridge between the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. Upasana is mental actions. So not only physical actions, which is Karma Kanda, but also prayers and meditations. So Upasana Kanda. And then we have the Upanishads, which forms the Jnana Kanda. In other way of looking at it, Upasana Kanda and Karma Kanda are put into one, because even though they are physical actions and mental actions, they are actions. So there is something to be done. So the whole Vedas can be divided into what needs to be done and what needs to be known. There is nothing to be done, there is something to be known, which is the Upanishad. Talking of the Upanishad, over the oral tradition, there must have been thousands of Upanishads. Thousands. This is what the scholars say. And out of which now only a couple of hundred Upanishads are left. And out of which 108 Upanishads are available with commentaries and so on. In fact, I forgot to bring it. I was meant to bring it. I have 3 sections of a book which details the mantras of 108 Upanishads and their meanings, brief meanings in Hindi. Very useful. I got this, I don't know, about 20 years back. I was just approaching a bookshop in New Delhi and I says, "You have any books on Upanishads?" So the shopkeeper told me, he says, "I found something very interesting for you. Just came out." Well, I bought it right there and then. And many times I actually have to go back on some of the Upanishads. In fact, just the other day, do you know Purusha Suktam forms, I think, a good portion of a complete Upanishad. I saw that the other day and I forget the name of the Upanishad. Purusha Suktam, of course, appears in all the Vedas. This is why it's so important. And with some changes in the structure. So anyway, these are the 108 Upanishads that are available easily. And there are some Upanishads that are very brief. I forget the name of the Upanishad, but there is an Upanishad which goes like this. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That's it. This is an Upanishad. But if you look at the commentary, it can really reveal the whole thing. What is Rama? What is Krishna? How do you pray to them? All of them, the very significance of it. It's just like there is a book that I got some time ago which explains the Panchakshari. Panchakshari is the Namah Shivaya. So Panch means there are 5 syllables. Na Maha is 2 syllables. The syllables means consonants, not the vowels. So Panchakshari means the Aksharaha. Aksharaha means one which does not decay. So that's a consonant. So Namah Shivaya has 5 consonants. Nama Shivaya. 5 consonants. Om is just added to it. Om Namah Shivaya. And so there is a very interesting, very important book on, I believe, either 17 or 19 ways of understanding Namah Shivaya. If we get some time, then I will hopefully teach it one of these days. I don't know when. I've got such a long list of materials to teach. Anyway, so that is one Upanishad which simply says, no, that is not an Upanishad. That's just a Panchakshari. So anyway, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare is an Upanishad. So out of these 108 Upanishads, there are 10 Upanishads that are considered to be a must for a serious student of Vedanta. 10. And why are they so? The tradition has it that Adi Shankara, who revived these structural study of Vedanta in a very beautiful way, commented on these 10 Upanishads. So if he commented on an Upanishad, it's a signal that this Upanishad is worth studying. So I don't know if you have a paper and pencil, you can write it down. I'll give you the names of all these 10 Upanishads and also which Vedas they appear in. Okay? So Rik has only one Upanishad out of these 10. Aitareya Upanishad is in the Rig Veda. In Krishna Yajuhu, so Yajuhu has both Krishna, which means black, and Shukla Yajuhu means white. There's some other reasons for what black, and let's not go into that. So if we look at Krishna Yajuhu, it has two Upanishads, Kathopanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad, the one that I just quoted. That's in Krishna Yajuhu, Kathopanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad. In Shukla Yajuhu, there is the biggest Upanishad and the shortest Upanishad. Brihadaranyaka is the biggest, lengthiest Upanishad, and Ishavasya Upanishad is the shortest Upanishad. Both of them are in Shukla Yajuhu. Then in Savaha is Kena and Chandogya. Kena Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad. And in Atharva is Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad and Prashna Upanishad. So these are the 10 important Upanishads that any serious student must study. And your basic study is not really complete until you get many, at least 6 to 7 of them. The Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya are so big that it is very difficult to study in all of it. But it can be done. I've done it a couple of times for each one of them. But when we were at the ashram, we did Kathopanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, then Ishavasya Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad and Mandukya Upanishad. So we didn't do Prashna and Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka. These are the, and Aitareya. We didn't do these 4. Those I did on my own later on. Anyway, these are the Upanishads. Then the last topic of this verse, and then we are done. We are ready to go to the next one. Is what the rest of it is going to talk about is all the constituents of the yajna. Animals, human beings, classification, we will go into all of that. But here Swami Maheshananji makes a very interesting point, an important point actually. He says that the sequence of these mantras in Purusha Suktam are important. In these two mantras, both starting with Tasmat Yajnat Sarvahutaha, the way of doing yajna, followed by the detailed instruction of the Vedas, are presented before the beings are actually powered. The form of the beings was already done in Sajato Atyarichyata, but they had not been powered. It's kind of like, I would say this, that you kind of design an appliance. You design the appliance, so that was Sajato Atyarichyata. But the appliance are not functional. They will be functional, that's when the yajnas will start, but before they are powered up, before they are made functional, an understanding of why they are done the way they are has to be given. So the Vedas are the instruction on how to do things before you do them. Maheshanji makes a beautiful point. He says, when we have children and the children asked for something, can I have this? Can I have some money for this? Swamiji says it's a mistake to entrust them with some money without telling them how to use the money wisely. It's like, for example, you take, nowadays, of course, times have changed. Every child is given a cell phone, smart cell phone. And so supposing you feel that, I can afford a cell phone. And I only have a 6-year-old. And I think he's a very smart person. Very smart person. So I think I'm just going to buy it for him. Let them figure out what to do and so on and so forth. What a mistake that is. Swamiji says that, and I can tell you this is very interesting. When I was growing up in my hometown Amritsar, and money was tight. We were not very poor, but not rich either. My grandparents were middle class families, and every penny was to be accounted for. And so when I will come home from school, my grandmother will give me a davanni. Davanni means this is 20 paisas out of a rupee. So chavanni is 4 and davanni is 2. So she would give me a davanni. Then she would ask me, what are you going to do about it? So she knew that there was a sweetmeat shop, a halwai shop, and there were a couple of things there. One was called chena murgi. Only those of you that know this Punjabi dish will understand what chena murgi is. It's some kind of a sweet thing. And so you get a cup of chena murgi for a davanni. So she knew that's what I was going for. And I was very truthful also. This is what I want the davanni for. But she would actually ask me what I'm going to use it for before she gave the davanni to me. This is very important. Swamiji says many times what happens is you say, I'm just going to give you a pocket money, and you figure out how best to do it. Swamiji says this is an absolute mistake. Let the children come to you and says, I want to get the following things. And you tell them, you think about it, and if it's a reasonable request, you say, I will get it for you. Instead of just handing over the money to them, which can be misused, your instructions are very important. Therefore, Swamiji says, the Vedic instruction on how to think, how to behave in the world, how to evaluate the world, it precedes actually giving it to you. See, you are not, he's going to, in the very next verse which we will study next week, where it says, Tasmad ashva ajayanta yekecho bhayadatah gavoha jaggire tasmad jata ajavayaha. This is now powering us. But before you power us, you have to be very clear about how we should behave. Beautiful point. That for that reason, the instructions given in the Vedas on what to do, how to do it, is important before you are asked to do it. So this is quite a bit further than what he said, but essentially this is what he was talked about it. And he says, nowadays I find that people abdicate their responsibility. They just say, don't trouble me, I'm very busy. Here is $50 a month to a teenager, and you figure out. Don't keep on asking me. Mistake. Just have the patience to understand where the money is going, what he or she is going to spend on before giving it to you. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, until you have finished your studies. This is the old Vedic system. Everything is changing because we have imported many of the Western ideas in India and so on. It's gotten mixed up and somewhat polluted in that manner. But the old Vedic system was that until your studies are complete, you are not asked to earn any money. And I remember when I first came to this country, I could see at that time, things have changed. Youngsters, 7, 8, 9-year youngsters, going on a bicycle and delivering newspapers in the neighborhood. And Swamiji also used to think this is absolutely a wrong thing to do. The thinking is, we are teaching our children the value of money. You have to do your own earning. You have to start getting to be on your own feet and so on. He says, I don't agree with that. I am responsible for teaching you, for supporting you until you finish college. When you finish college, then you get a job and you figure out what to do, and hopefully we can teach you the value of money as we go along. He says that getting a 9-year-old to get up half hour or an hour earlier and then deliver all the newspapers and then be tired and then go to school, he says the wrong thing to do. So this is exactly the sequencing of the Purusha Suktam, is that please understand how to lead a life, how to think before you lead it. The instructions are very important. And anyway, so with that, I think much of the verse number 7, Tasmat Yagyat Sarvahutaha Richas Samani Jaggire Chanda Gumsi Jaggire Tasmat Yajus Tasmada Jayata, is now over, and next week we will take the Tasmada Shva Ajayanta, and there is a couple of more points that I want to make, but I'll defer doing it until next week. So with that, I close the class and with a prayer, and then we will see if you have any questions. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay. So, a question from Balamani. Can nivritti be understood as soul realization and pravritti as physical pleasure? Can individuals swim to nivritti surrounded by pravritti without going to aranya sannyasa? Yes, it's so the nivritti, I wouldn't use those words, Mr. Mani, that you have used as soul realization and physical pleasure. I wouldn't use those words, but in general your direction is correct, in the sense, what I would say is nivritti marga, the nivritti method, is to discover that you are the source of unchanging happiness. And pravritti marga is fooling yourself into understanding that the source of happiness is outside of you. This is the way I would present. And I think another way to look at that would be that the pravritti marga, the method of what you would call physical pleasure or material happiness, is like symptomatic relief. Symptomatic relief. And so if you have some physical problem and you don't want to wait for discovering what the disease is, you just go to the local CVS store and says, do you have something? I have this following symptoms. And so the pharmacist says, yep. We go to aisle number 3A on the second shelf. There is this pill. You take this and you're going to be okay. So this is the physical, this is the pravritti marga. Pravritti marga means I don't feel well. Something is not right with me. I'm not a happy person. Then you can do something to get rid of this discomfort. Either go and have a big wonderful meal, go and have an ice cream, go see a movie, whatever it may be. But this marga really doesn't solve your basic issue that you are a wanting person. You're always looking for some kind of a relief. Whereas the nivritti marga can occur when the symptomatic relief is visibly temporary. This has happened to all of us. Something happens, you solve it. Then it happens again. You solve it again. Then it happens again. You get tired of it. And then you say, you know what, I might as well make an appointment with a doctor and get the proper treatment. That is the nivritti marga. So the nivritti marga is the resorting to treating your situation as a disease, not as a symptomatic relief. This is the way I would put it. Can an individual swim to nivritti surrounded by pravritti? So again, just changing the words. Yes. In fact, if I can just resort to the example that I just gave, which is symptomatic relief versus the disease release. Yes, you can continue with symptomatic relief, knowing fully well that it is temporary. if you resort to it as the only thing that you are going to do, it may not work because the disease has not been treated well. But while the disease is being treated, it is okay to go to a pharmacist and say, by the way, I'm getting some fundamental relief, but in the meantime, I'm still having symptoms. Can you please give me something? That's okay. So, this is the way I would answer your second question. And so without going to Aranya Sannyasa, no, I think that the disease is Aranya Sannyasa. You cannot, if you continue to resort to an outside help, which is Gramya, then you are not really treating the disease. You have to go to a proper treatment, which is Aranya and Sannyasa. Yeah, that's how I would see it. Shanti Kumar says, even today in India, children are supported to complete their education, including the MS in US, to take up a job, but the value of money is given along the line. Yeah, that's our old culture. Absolutely. And of course, as the person grows older, I remember when I first came to this country, my father was able to give me some money, but I had to get a teaching assistantship. I was 23, so I was pretty old already. But I had to get a teaching assistantship in order to support myself. I could not keep on asking my father, because things were very expensive in those days, in dollars and so on. So my dad had told me, okay, I will send it to you, and maybe the first 6 months or a year, but after that you have to be on your own, which is fine. I did that, luckily. But if I was 10 years old and my father said, I'm only going to give you 1 rupee, the rest of the 5 rupees you have to earn yourself, then that is not the right thing to do. Yeah. Any other questions? I don't see anything else. So let me wait for a little while before signing off. Good. Thank you, Maniji. Wonderful that it was clear to you. I don't see any other questions, so I close the class and I look forward to seeing you next week. Om.